Okay, we have two more absolute value equation problems to do. So let's start with our first one here. Let's do 3 absolute value of 3x plus 2 closed plus 2 equals, let's do 5. So the first thing we have to do is, again, we have to isolate our absolute value. So to isolate our absolute value, what we have to do is we have to get rid of the 2 and the 3 that is on the outside of the absolute value. You cannot take this 3 and distribute it over. Can't cross that wall. Okay, I want you to think about it. Can't cross the wall. It's not a set of parentheses. It's a wall. So you can't cross that. So what you have to do is you take to the other side. But if you notice, the 3 is being multiplied by that absolute value. So to get rid of that, we actually have to wait and get rid of that 2 first. So to get rid of the 2, we have to subtract it. You may ask, well, why do we have to get rid of the 2 first? Well, being adding and subtracting, that comes first before you would multiply and divide. When you're talking about the order of operations, to undo things, you want to go back up that order, right? So you want to make sure that you are getting rid of this 2 first, bringing down the absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 3. Now, again, like I said, you can't take that 3 and distribute it through. So what you have to do is you have to divide both sides by 3. So you're left with the absolute value of 3x plus 2 equals 1. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, we have to set up the two equations where 3x plus 2 is equal to 1 and 3x plus 2 is equal to negative 1. Let's solve both of these equations. So to do that, we subtract 2, bring down our 3x, get negative 1. Divide by 3, x equals negative 1 over 3. We'll do the same thing to the other side. So we're going to subtract 2. We're going to get 3x equals negative 3. Divide by 3. X is going to equal negative 1. Now, when we talk about how this is solved, again, we can take these two answers, plug them back into the original absolute value equation, and it should equal 5. And it will. Now, what happens if we start an equation? So this is new stuff here. What happens if we start an equation where we have the absolute value of x plus 2 equals negative 4? Well, we're not allowed to start an absolute value where it's set to equal to a negative. Never allowed to have a negative. And so that's what you need to think about. You may say, well, how can I have this negative up here? Well, that's a whole different process. See, I'm taking and I'm splitting it up into two parts. I'm splitting it into a positive and a negative. But I cannot ever start with a negative absolute value. It's just not allowed because distance can't be negative, okay? Distance can't be negative. And so this negative 1 up here is actually referring to what can x equal so that it will give me this 5 over here. Okay, that's completely different. I cannot say what does x equal so that I can get a distance of negative 4. See, I'm not allowed to have a distance that's negative. And so when I have something where the absolute value is equal to a negative number, that's no solution. Okay, so you have to make sure that you understand that. Distance can never be negative. Okay, and so if we start off, or if we get to a point where the absolute value is set equal to a negative, well, I'm not allowed to have that, and so I have to put no solution. So another example of that would be if I got to this point and I saw that 1 was negative 1. Well, I can automatically quit there then. I can't set up these cases, okay? I have to quit, and I have to put no solution. But if it is positive, then I have to continue and solve just like I did.